Vulnerability is your hidden superpower. So when we talk about vulnerability, a lot of people have some negative connotations about vulnerability. It's perceived as weakness. If I'm vulnerable, then people can exploit me. If I'm vulnerable, then people can walk all over me and take advantage of me. But that is not the type of vulnerability I'm talking about. You should never let anybody take advantage of you. You should never let anybody exploit you, okay? But like I said, that's not the type of vulnerability I'm talking about. The type of vulnerability I want to talk to you about today is emotional vulnerability. And this is something that most of us fear tremendously. Emotional vulnerability shows up in things like failure, rejection, being judged by other people, right? We hate these things. Because we hate these things, we do whatever we can to avoid them. So you'll avoid going to talk to that girl that you like. You'll avoid starting that business. You'll avoid putting yourself out there in some way that you haven't before because you can't deal with the vulnerability of not knowing how it's going to go, how it's going to turn out. It's just unbearable. And this is, I think, a problem on a grand scale. It's like a cultural, societal problem, is that we have become very, very bad at dealing with emotions. And so we can't really do anything. We're very, very limited. And so if you can develop your ability to be vulnerable, you will live a much richer life. Because the opposite to that is to live with like walls, is to hide yourself. On the surface, it might look like you have the perfect self-image, like you've got it all under control. But usually when I see someone like that, I know that they don't have it all under control. And usually underneath all of that control is a lot of fear. You'll see a lot of people like this online, like influencers. Anytime somebody looks like they've got it all under control, they do not. I can tell you that, right? Because that is not human. True humanity has weaknesses. It just does. Everybody is vulnerable. Everybody has weaknesses. As much as you try to control and micromanage everything, most of life is outside of your control, right? You might get sick tomorrow, your partner might leave you, you might lose your job. Anything can happen, right? We can control a limited amount, but we are so scared of the unknown, we're so scared of uncertainty that we fight against it. But if you can learn to befriend it, you can learn to befriend being vulnerable and uncertainty, that's when you develop into a stronger person. It might look like the person who's like got the perfect self-image and everything under control and no one can touch them, that person's strong and that person's powerful. No, that person's actually scared. They're so scared that they can't ever let the guard down. The truly courageous person is the person who lives with an open heart. The person who lives with their heart on their sleeve. That's the truly courageous person, because they know they might get their heart broken. Their partner might leave them for someone else. Or they might fail miserably, but at least they tried. But you cannot try, you cannot give it everything if you have this deep fear of vulnerability and you are just terrified of failure. Ultimately, fear of failure, fear of rejection is fear of the unknown. So when we talk about spirituality, when we talk about changing your life, you need to step into the unknown. And most human beings now, we've grown, like we can't tolerate the unknown. We've become allergic to it. Like this is like a cultural issue, global. It's getting worse and worse. Things like COVID probably made it worse. We just are lacking so much emotional intelligence and emotional mastery that life's small things are just getting the better of us, and it's really holding us back and limiting us. So one of the best things you can do is learn to make yourself more vulnerable. Put yourself out there a bit more, okay? It's going to hurt. It's going to be scary. But over time, you will develop emotional resilience. Something I read recently on a YouTube video I was watching. It was a video related to this kind of topic. And I assume it was a girl. She'd left a comment. And the comment said something like, she sent a guy a selfie of herself. And he didn't reply. It'd been like 2 days, didn't reply. And her comment said something like, I'm now very motivated to go to the gym and work out, and I'm never going to let anybody hurt me again. Right? As though he hurt her. And this comment had hundreds of likes, and I was just thinking, that's just such a damaging way to look at life and relationships. Just because you didn't get a reply, you're now going to put up these walls. You're now never going to live open. You're never going to make yourself vulnerable to anybody because of that. Because of your inability to deal with a bit of emotional discomfort is essentially what we're talking about. And I see so many people like this. Being a man, I know how much of this affects men, right? A lot of men, we tend to have our walls up a lot. We tend to not want to let people get too close to us, right? So you always got to play the tough guy. But ultimately, like I said, that persona, it's not real. It's all based around fear. You're so scared. Maybe you got your heart broken by a girl, and again, like the example I used, you put up these walls that you're never going to let anybody get close to you. But if you do that, you are never really going to truly live your life. That's the problem with that approach. You'll always be a little bit cold, detached. You'll never have deep connection. You'll never have true love. You'll never have intimacy. You'll never experience the juice and the richness of life. And the person who has the courage, because that's what it means to live with this open heart, that's courage, that's balls, that's what really being a man is to live with an open heart. You might get your heart broken. She might leave you. She might cheat on you. I mean, most of these things shouldn't happen as long as you have emotional intelligence and discernment, and you can tell who is a good, honest, trustworthy person and who is not. If you have like some emotional intelligence, no one's going to cheat on you, right? But you just need to get over your fears. Fears that you probably had for a very, very long time. Fears that are now holding you back. And it's uncomfortable to deal with all this fear. But it's the only way. It's only on the other side of fear that you will live your best life. Where you will live your true purpose. But while you're trying to control everything and you're fearful and scared and you can't make yourself vulnerable, your life's just going to suck. It took me a long time to realize this, that the core of who you are is vulnerable. The core of who you are is kind of soft of everybody. You can protect that softness. You can only allow certain people into that softness. You don't have to allow everybody in, but you have to be open to some people. And if you are not, and you're just completely walled off, then you don't really know who you are. Okay? And so this is why we do a lot of the spiritual work and the trauma healing. Eventually, when you do the spiritual work, you find this, it's almost like an inner child, this very sensitive part to yourself, deep, deep, deep in like the core of who you are. And that's where you connect to your humanity, and that's the core of your spiritual self. When you access that, that's like love. You eventually find true, deep love. It's not weakness, okay? So when I say the core of yourself is sensitive, you might think, oh, that sounds like weakness, I don't want that. That's your ego talking. That delicateness is like the delicateness of a flower. And just like the flower is beautiful, but it's delicate. But that's the beauty of it, you see? And that's the same with every single person. We are delicate, but we're beautiful. And at the same time, it doesn't mean you let people pluck that flower. You don't let people damage that flower. You protect the flower, but you're not afraid to show the flower at the same time. Okay? Don't be one of these people who puts up walls and lives in fear because you're so scared of showing people who you are. So the new year is around the corner. This is probably one of the best things you can do to live a more purposeful, heart-led life, is to open your heart, okay? Don't be afraid of being rejected. Don't be afraid of having your heart broken. It's probably one of the most empowering experiences we can have, is to have your heart broken. Right? Really, truly, it's one of the most healing, life-changing experiences that you can have. I hope you get your heart broken, because it's that empowering. If you heal from it, when you heal from it, okay? So that's everything I've got to talk about in this video. If you want to watch more videos like this, feel free to check out these right here. But until next time, God bless.